And I just wanted to go over some brief things so when you get your new trailer that you can unpack it properly. So once you get your trailer, it's going to come with a white boat wrap on it that is shrink wrapped to the trailer to protect it in transit. It's going to be connected at multiple points on your trailer, so you want to make sure that as you're unwrapping it and you're cutting that stuff off, you want to make sure that you don't damage any electrical connections like wires that might be hanging like this. So just be cognizant and think of those things as you're unwrapping it. Hi, one other thing I wanted to go over is when you get your new trailer, you just want to make sure it's filled with the proper fluids to the levels that it needs to be filled at. And there are a few things just to look at initially. One is your hydraulic oil right here, your reservoir, is going to be filled with hydraulic oil. You just want to make sure that when you get your trailer that you take a look at it just to make sure it has hydraulic oil in it. And you have your blower. Your blower has a sight glass on it that shows you that it's filled with hydraulic oil in the blower, just to make sure it has the right amount of fluid in it. So those three things you just kind of want to do as an initial check just to make sure they have the appropriate fluids. You also have your HPU unit that moves your spoils tank in and out and also opens and closes the arms. This also should be filled. Just make sure that those things are filled, and then we can start the process of now being able to use your new Wachs trailer. So now that you have checked your fluids in your trailer, now you're ready to get through to the initial startup process and also to be able to know what the features look like and what they do. So the first thing you would be able to do is, on this unit, this is a gas unit. On a diesel unit, you'll have a kind of a rectangle control box. So that will be the only difference between the two in that aspect. So you can turn the key on, and then you can check to make sure all of your features work. This is to open and close your door, and that's all hydraulically ran by that HPU back that we spoke about earlier. So this is open it, and this is to close it. This button here, or this switch here, allows you to bring the tank out and dump it, and then also bring it back to its resting position. Right here you have your water, pressure washer clutch, and then your vac clutch, and then it'll have a feature for running both at one time. So you just want to check to make sure that your clutches operate. So you'll hear them make a noise like that. So now they're all working and all on. You also have your light bar and your spotlights. So inside your box, you have a controller that if you want to change the pattern of your lights, you can do so. However, once you have it to a pattern that you will use more often, I would say probably leave it there unless you need to move it, and then you can just cycle it with the switches here. So this switch here turns your spotlight on, and this switch here turns your light bar on. Now that we have checked those switches to make sure everything works, you want to make sure all of these features are off when you're starting your engine. And the proper procedure of starting a gas motor is right here. You have the clutch, you would pull that out, start your motor and let it settle off, and then you push that back in. Okay, so now that you have checked your switches to make sure everything functions, now you can go to starting the motor. When you do that, you just want to make sure that your clutch systems, all of your clutch systems are in the off position. And so now you can go and pull your choke, you pull it all the way out. You can start the motor then at the key, and after your motor settles off, you can then push your choke switch back in. So we'll go through that procedure right now. So that's out. And so as you can see, it's going to stumble around a little bit as the motor warms up. Once it does that, you can push it in, and now your motor's running the proper way it should. Right here, it's your throttle. So that's basically the procedure to get it started up. The only different thing is when you have a diesel unit, this right here is a 27 horse Kohler motor. If you had a diesel unit, it would be a Kubota. So the only difference with that is you would have a box right here. You would turn your switch on, and it has to go through a preheat function. So it'll go through a preheat function for about 8 to 10 seconds. On the screen, it'll show you that preheat is now done. Now you can safely and effectively start your motor. So now that we've gone over how to effectively start the motor, now we can talk about properly engaging the clutch systems. So on this system, you have two different clutches, one for your blower and then one for your water pump. There is a feature that if you're cleaning out a valve box or doing hydro excavation, that you can run both features at the same time. So to the left here is your water pump clutch switch, and that one would just be turned to here for just water alone. but you always want to engage your clutches at idle. So you would never engage those clutches at full RPM, because what it'll do is you have an electromagnetic clutch that goes from 0 RPM up to match the motor speed, and if that happens too quickly, it'll actually damage the clutch. So now that we know that we need to engage these clutches at idle, we need to talk about engine RPM and speed while you're doing these features. Now, when you're running your ERV, it does not need to be run at anything above idle unless you want the ERV to turn faster. However, the way this unit is designed is that when the blower is running, or the water pump, it needs a certain RPM for the blower to provide the appropriate amount of suction, and for the water pump to provide a certain amount of pressure to have your system work properly. So now that we know how to properly engage the clutches, let's talk about the right RPM to run your various systems. So when you're running your blower or your water pump, they both need full engine RPM to run at a sufficient amount of suction for the blower and pressure for the pressure washer. So there's two different ways that you can operate this throttle. In the middle, you'll notice that there's a little button. You can push that button in to go quickly and pull it straight out. That will give you full RPM so that your blower and your water pump both will work at their effective ranges. Now also, you can turn this counterclockwise to increase RPM, or clockwise to then reduce that RPM. This throttle feature can be worked in both ways, so I'll show you briefly here. One is I'm turning it, and that's going to increase RPM. So now when I want to reduce that RPM, I can either push this button in and press it in, and then that'll drop the RPM quickly, or I can simply just turn it back to the right, and that'll do the same thing. So this is kind of meant just so that you can use it either way, depending on the needs of what you're doing. And also, you just want to make sure that periodically you just maintain that and properly oil it so that that function works properly for a long duration of time. So now we can go over the gauges that are going to be on the front of your control panel. Your gauge on the left is going to be vacuum. Your system will pull between 11 and 12 inches of mercury, and that's going to be for your vac system. So that's how you know your vac system is running at its efficient levels. If it ever drops below that, then you're going to probably right in here check your filter just to make sure it's not clogged or it's not dirty. But you should pull 11 to 12 inches of mercury from here. Over here you have your voltmeter. So once you turn the key on, that's going to show you the battery's resting voltage. Once you start the motor, that voltage should increase to at least 13 volts. That lets you know your charging system is actually working. Now, it will climb if you go increase in RPM. It may climb slightly above that to maybe 13.5 volts or so, but you really want to look for that 13 volts. Also right here, you have your tachometer / hour meter. So in this position, without the motor running, it's going to show you your hour meter. Once you actually start the motor, then that's going to transition into now showing you RPM, as we will see here. So as you can see now, on this unit, it's showing that the unit is idling at about 1200 RPM. Once I turn the motor off, you will see that it will transition back into an hour meter. There it goes. So now I want to talk to you about maintaining your blower. The blower has two lobes in there, and basically they have a very tight tolerance so that you can create vacuum for the system. So we would like you periodically, and more than likely after every use. Right here, you have this little petcock. What you'll do is you'll start the motor, let it run at idle, and then you'll actually engage your blower and let it run for a little bit. Then you want to open this petcock, and then you're going to fog that with WD-40 for about maybe 10 seconds. And so after you do that, you can let the blower run a little bit so that it sucks that oil into the blower and coats those lobes. Then you can actually turn this off and shut your system down. And then you'll know that your blower has been properly maintained, so it should provide you years of use.